How much did his Liberal Party colleagues know about the behaviour of the late MP Cyril Smith, and when did they know it? The Daily Mail's been serialising a book by the Labour MP Simon Danczuk, who won Smith's old seat of Rochdale, in which he says that his predecessor was a notorious paedophile, and that it was widely known by some of his most senior colleagues in the 1970s. In those days, of course, Smith was a Liberal MP. The Liberal Democrats hadn't come into being. But Mr Danczuk says Smith was protected over the years by what he describes as a Westminster establishment that stretched across the parties. And eventually, of course, he got a knighthood on the recommendation, as is usual in such cases, of his then party leader, David Steele. Well, I'll be talking to Mr Danczuk in a moment about his book and about Cyril Smith, but first, our reporter Tom Bateman, who has been doing some delving into the story. Tom.
Well, of course, the key question here, Jim, is whether senior members of the party's MPs knew about the substance of the allegations regarding Cyril Smith at the time he was alive, at the time he was an MP. Now, the Lib Dems have said, Nick Clegg has said that they've carried out an audit of everyone in the current parliamentary party who was around at the time, and it's thrown up nothing, that nobody knew anything. Now, we've been speaking to a chap called Charles Baker. He was an activist for the SDP during the 1983 election campaign in Hertfordshire.
When it, of course, went into alliance with the Liberal Party.
Absolutely, and, you know, several years before the merger that created the Liberal Democrats. Now, he says that he distinctly remembers a conversation that he had with a more senior local figure in the party, in which he was told that they were worried news was about to break of an allegation involving Cyril Smith and child abuse. He felt very much that that news must have come down the chain of command at the SDP, and said that if he, as a local activist, knew about this, more senior figures must have known.
There was a kind of alert or alarm that one of the other parties had got hold of the fact that Cyril Smith had interfered with boys yet again. Underline the word again, which had us all, obviously, you know, puzzled what's going on kind of thing, and this could damage us because of the alliance with David Steele.
When you say it was an alert, what do you mean by that? How did you hear?
It's come to me. It's come from head office in London.
So who told you about it?
Well, our SDP branch.
And do you remember the sort of nature of the conversation? Why were you being told about it?
Well, because it was worrying for all of us. I mean, we were quite a strong local party. It's all verbal. And all I can say is what I heard, what was said to me.
What did you think when you heard that?
Well, to me, I mean, it's appalling, but I thought, my God, you know, this is going to destroy us if it comes out. The word yet again, which was the worst thing about it. In other words, they must have known about him before.
So that was Charles Baker, and I spoke to one senior alliance figure from the era last night who told me that he was extremely doubtful that such a message would have come from SDP head office, and that he, for one, wasn't aware of the claims surrounding Smith. And we also put Charles Baker's claims to the Lib Dems last night, and they repeated that everyone in the current parliamentary party who was around at the time had been asked, and that nobody knew.
Yeah, and we did ask the party, obviously, for an official spokesman. None was available. Tom Bateman, thanks very much. We're joined by the Labour MP Simon Danczuk, whose book is at the centre of these allegations. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's be clear here. How widely do you think there was enough knowledge about these activities to suggest that it was well-founded? In other words, not just the kind of odd rumour that surrounds an MP from time to time, and anybody at Westminster, you included, will have heard about people, but something that took it to a different level. How convinced are you that that was there?
Yeah, absolutely convinced, and I think the book will show that. I mean, these rumours were very well known around Rochdale, so Rochdale Liberal councillors must surely have heard those rumours. It would be impossible for you to live or, you know, move around Rochdale without hearing the rumours around Cyril Smith, and that went on for decades. Those rumours existed for decades.
But that's very curious, you see. If, you know Rochdale well now, in this era. I don't. I've only been there. But, I mean, Cyril Smith was a huge political presence there.
Yeah.
Now, if it was as widely known as you suggest that it was, that there was enough rumour to suggest that it was well-founded. How on earth did he go to build an impregnable political base that lasted for decades?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair question, and I think, there's no doubt about it, the rumours existed, and you could go around Rochdale and you would hear...
I'd heard them myself at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. But the most important point is whether these rumours existed at a national level. Well, surely Liberal councillors in Rochdale would talk to people at a national level, but there is already evidence there, isn't there? Because Michael Meadowcroft, a Liberal MP, is on the record as saying that he heard these rumours. David Steele himself is on the record of saying that he heard these rumours, that he actually challenged Cyril Smith about these rumours. I spoke to a Liberal student...
Who denied them?
Yes, absolutely. I spoke to a Liberal student activist from the mid-70s who said these allegations actually got raised on the floor of conference for the Liberals.
You see, there's another interesting thing. I mean,
lots of people are aware of it.
Yeah. I mean, people who, I think the book was only published yesterday, but people will have read the extracts in the Mail, and you adduce a lot of evidence about police interviews and so on, and it's a very, very compelling and disturbing story, as anybody who's read it will realise. But there's something else peculiar here. You suggest that there was a cover-up and an attempt to hush this up, which went beyond a sort of political party thing inside his own party, or indeed inside, the Westminster establishment, but involved sort of police and national security agencies. Now, well, I find it hard to understand why the national authorities would want to protect Cyril Smith. I mean, there's no obvious reason for it. He was never going to be in government. He wasn't... can you explain that?
Yeah, I think the way of explaining that, and what the book shows, is that the police, the frontline police, were continually investigating Smith. You probably wouldn't find somebody who has been investigated as much as Smith has. Lots of dossiers in terms of
what happened to them
behaviour. Yeah, well, we know that some of them were spirited away. Ex-police officers talk about that. But let me answer the crux of your question. I think when he was initially arrested, he used the sort of the local power that he had in the 60s to be able to convince people that he shouldn't be prosecuted. But once he became a member of Parliament in 72, over time, I think he joined an obviously informal network of paedophiles that existed in and around Westminster.
Well, you say that with total certainty.
Well, I say that because he was identified as attending Elm Guesthouse. Metropolitan Police said he was there. I've spoke to a victim who was at Elm Guesthouse that was abused by...
This is a place in South London.
Yeah, absolutely. And where it is alleged that other significant paedophiles attended. So there are many concerns. I mean, you had Sir Peter Morrison, who's identified. He was the PPS to Thatcher, the MP for Chester, who's been named as a paedophile, who was acting and operating at that time. We know that Smith knew...
He's now dead, we should say.
Yes, absolutely. And we know that Smith knew a number of significant paedophiles at that time, and we know that continually police were making investigations that were continually stopped. So we know that there was some kind of cover-up. But the crux of the answer to the question is that had he been prosecuted, then the house of cards would have fallen in terms of that paedophile network, and it could have brought the government down.
Well, it could have brought the government down. That's a very strong statement. I mean, he was a member of a party that had a handful of seats.
No, exactly, but the point is that he was part of a network, and had he been prosecuted, he could have easily...
But you haven't demonstrated that, have you?
What, that he could have been
part of a network?
Oh, well, I've just gone through all the evidence that suggested that he was part of a network. That
Suggested,
he knew... Yeah, absolutely.
There's obviously something that will be said to you, finally, which is that you're a Labour MP in a marginal seat. You don't want the Liberal Democrats to make a comeback in Rochdale. This helps you.
Well, let me say, this isn't about party politics, and if you read the extracts in the Daily Mail, you will see that we talk about Labour having failed in some respects. We talk about Conservative councillors. There isn't that much politics in this. This is about the victims that were abused by Cyril Smith.
Simon Danczuk, Labour MP for Rochdale. Thanks for joining us.